Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another episode of the basketball segment on the Pump Tech Sports Show. I'm here today with Marco again, and this week we're going to be going over with the passing of the NBA trade deadline, just some of the big moves that have happened over the past week with the deadline. We're going to talk about our Raptors and how they went through a little bit of a trade fiasco. We're going to talk about some of the teams that have been sellers and some of the teams that have been buyers over the trade deadline. So, Marco, is there any trade that you wanted to start off by talking about?
Yeah, man, there's just so much to talk about. It's awesome. I love when all this stuff happens, and it just makes our jobs a lot easier, Just gives us something to talk about on the weekend, and we're trying to brainstorm ideas and stuff, and then all this stuff happens, which we knew it would. And yeah, it's nice to see things play out. And it's also cool because we were talking off air, a lot of the stuff that we kind of said teams should do ended up kind of happening. And I think a good place to start with that, and the team that has done a lot of stuff, is the Magic. So the Magic got rid of Vooch, but they pretty much pulled the plug. Like they are planning to rebuild. So we'll go over the trades real quick. They traded Evan Fournier, they traded Vucevic, as well as Aaron Gordon. So Evan Fournier was dealt to the Celtics. The Magic got Jeff Teague, who will be waived, and 2 future second-round picks. And I think this is I guess we're talking about the Magic right now, but I just want to comment really quickly. I think this is a great pickup for the Celtics. Evan Fournier has been playing lights out this year, and he just continues to improve every single year. He's an amazing shooter. He provides a lot to the Celtics. They've had a difficult season this year. I mean, they're still a great team, but they've had some difficulties where, I don't know, in my opinion, I kind of thought they'd be better this year. And I think Evan Fournier provides them with something that they were missing. A little bit of scoring, some additional offense, firepower.
It's just going to be interesting to see sort of where Fournier actually fits into the Celtics. I thought, I anticipated that he was going to get traded, but I think the Celtics was sort of an interesting location for him to land. They did only give up really two second-round picks because Jeff Teague's kind of nothing at this point in his career. He's just going to get, as you said before, waived already. So Fournier's probably going to, I think he'll probably be like the sixth man on that team, because a big thing that the Celtics have struggled with this year is that they haven't really had a lot of scoring outside of their starting five. Like their bench unit it's been really just in much need of a spark this season. And I think that having Evan Fournier as the first guy off their bench will be a good way for them to kind of provide that. So I think it was a good move for the Celtics.
Yeah, for sure. And I think for the Magic, I mean, obviously me and you both are in on that idea of pulling the plug and rebuilding. But personally, I think maybe Fournier could have been dealt off for a little bit more value. 2 future second-round picks is all right, but in the NBA, usually second-round picks don't pay off that well. I mean, if you're talking about like NFL second-round picks, they're extremely valuable. But in the NBA, second-round picks they're not they leave a lot to be desired for the most part. So I think maybe the Magic have done a little bit better with that. But we'll move on. So Nuggets and the Magic also made a trade. The Magic sent away Gary Clark and Aaron Gordon, and the Magic got Gary Harris, RJ Hampton, and future first-round picks. I like this trade a lot better for the Magic. I think the Nuggets, Aaron Gordon will probably – I can see Aaron Gordon fitting in well to that Nuggets team. I think Gary Harris, he struggled with injuries, and I mean, that Nuggets team is so deep, he hasn't really had a lot of time to shine and get the spotlight. But I think it's a good place for him to, I guess, see what he can do. And RJ Hampton is also, a young developing player. So I think that's definitely a good pull from the Magic.
Yeah, and just in terms of Aaron Gordon, I think Aaron Gordon being added to the Nuggets too is a little bit of an underrated acquisition of the deadline. A lot of the time, Aaron Gordon, personally, I don't love his game that much, just the type of player that he is. I don't think that it's something that you can build the team around. But having him be sort of the like third or fourth guy, maybe even the fifth guy, to be honest, on the Nuggets.
Nuggets are deep.
his skill set actually blends very well with what the Nuggets already had in place. They've got a great blend now of size, athleticism, scoring, and sort of playmaking at all five of the positions, and that can sort of like make those athletic plays at the rim and just move around inside very quickly. He's lengthy. He's the kind of guy that he has the athleticism that in a playoff series, you can throw him on the LeBrons and on the Kawhis, and you can be like decently confident about his ability to defend them. So I think that was a great thing for the Nuggets to add. And I think if they're clearly they are planning on making a deep playoff push,
sure.
filling that sort of hole in their team was the one thing they needed to accomplish at the deadline this year.
Yeah, I agree. And and from the Nuggets point of view, like you're not giving up that much with the players that you gave up, considering the Nuggets depth.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know, even though Aaron Gordon might not even be like, he might be their fourth or fifth option, having passers that are so great on your team, such as Jamal Murray, as well as obviously Jokic, I'm excited to see those lobs.
Yeah, and they're like the Nuggets offense right now as well is that it's like it's very perimeter oriented in that they rely a lot on their threes falling, but when those threes don't fall, they have a little bit of trouble getting inside. So now bringing in a guy like Gordon into your starting front court, you can kind of get that spacing back to how it should be, where teams aren't just completely just closing you out to the outside and forcing your guys to take shots that might not be the best shots to take. So
yeah, 100%.
Overall, I really liked that trade for both teams, to be honest, because we were talking about this in our last video that the Magic just needed to move in this direction. As much as I'm sure if you're a Magic fan that this hurts seeing Vucevic traded and Aaron Gordon gone. Fournier was there for a while as well, but this was a necessary blow up, I think for the Magic. And all things considered, for those three guys, they got a fantastic return at the deadline.
Yeah. Well, do you want to touch real quickly on what the Vooch trade was?
Yeah.
I'm sure most people watching this,
and that's like, to be honest, like I thought there was a good possibility that Vooch got traded, but I was very surprised that he went to the Bulls.
Me too. I could have never, to be honest, I thought he might be going to like a current or maybe next year contender.
Mm-hmm.
And no offense to the Bulls, but I didn't, I guess, see them as that. But looking at the Bulls roster now, I definitely think that they're moving in the right direction. And they're moving in a direction, which I think is important for a lot of these teams. And that's why me and you are, we believe that the Orlando Magic are doing the right things, that moving in no direction at all and just being like, okay, is not a good thing. So yeah, the trade was Vucevic and Aminu, Al-Farouq Aminu, for Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and 2 future first-round picks. So first of all, I really like the trade for the Magic, and I really like the trade for the Bulls. I think it's a good trade either way. I think the Bulls are getting a premier center, and Al-Farouq Aminu is not a bad role player either. And Vucevic is in my opinion, he's a top 5 center in the league. I mean, yeah, it's close. He is probably a top 5 center in the league, and or somewhere around that 5 spot.
Yeah, he's in that tier for sure.
For sure. And I like the Magic as well. Like Wendell Carter Jr. is kind of like a young Vucevic type player. Like he's a good passer. He can stretch the floor. And I think that's probably what the Magic are going to ask of him a little bit more, be like that multi-threat player. And I think he has a lot of room to develop. And obviously Otto Porter Jr. Been having some difficulties staying on the court. But yeah, I like the trade, and also 2 future first-round picks, just building around these picks and building around your young players like Fultz and Isaac, as well as Cole Anthony. I think the Magic have done well with these three trades for the most part.
A thing in this trade that I really like from the Bulls side of it is that they like you said before, they're also just moving now in an appropriate direction. The Bulls are a team that they had spent so much time just rebuilding and trying to sort of build up that young core, but they were having a lot of trouble getting over the hump. And I think it's a very just smart thing from a team building perspective that they recognized what they have in Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a player that is good enough that you can build your franchise around. And at a certain point, like great on the Bulls, they rebuilt and they got a young team that they're going to be pretty decent. But the question definitely existed about whether or not they could get over the hump. And I think by adding Vucevic, they made a well-timed like sort of move to swing for the fences, because if you're the Bulls, you're going one or two ways. You either continue the rebuild, maybe not continue the rebuild, but
if you either build or sell, like you're either buyers or sellers.
Exactly. You're either buyers or sellers.
And they decided to be buyers. And sorry to cut you off, but this is one thing that like it's just so important, as when you have a player like Zach LaVine on your team, who's like this budding talent that is clearly becoming a superstar, by adding another superstar in Vucevic, you're telling him, we believe in you. And I think that speaks volumes to a young ascending player such as Zach LaVine. And I just had to get that in there real quick.
Yeah. 100%. Like it's almost like if they don't make that move for Vucevic, you're taking what Zach LaVine has already sort of become, and you're just wasting it and starting over.
Exactly.
So I think that's one mistake that franchises kind of tend to make, is that they don't know when to pick their spots, when to try to use what they've built to make that punch. But I think that's something that the Bulls did a very good job of at the deadline. And Bulls fans should be very excited for this, because the NBA is just better when the Bulls are good.
Yeah. The Bulls have had difficulty since kind of like Derrick Rose, I feel like. And I think Bulls fans right now, they should be excited. Vucevic is a great player. I love him. And obviously, like Zach LaVine is just showing out. And you even have young guys too, like White, Markkanen. Like they have a team that has a lot of potential. I feel like I'm missing an important player, another big man. Maybe not, but
Patrick Williams.
Patrick Williams, exactly. Yeah. Patrick Williams has been looking really good too. And they have a good team, and I see them doing well in the future.
Yeah.
There's so many trades to talk about.
We can't. Maybe let's do Raptors last. Let's do Oladipo, and then maybe let's do the Powell trade. Because I've got
we'll bust through a couple quick, and then we'll finish with Powell.
Yeah. Okay.
Oladipo. I know that you definitely have a lot to say about Oladipo, because you didn't really like how that whole situation went down. But really quickly, I think the Rockets, they messed up. They did not get.
They got nothing for
Oladipo. And think about, so this has all happened in the last like 2 months, maybe 3 months, of like Harden going from being their player and then thinking they're building around Harden to Harden being like, I want out, and then having to blow up the team because of Harden. And now you have they had a choice between Caris LeVert and Oladipo.
Mm-hmm.
And they picked Oladipo.
What did they get for Caris LeVert from Indiana?
I think it was very kind of one for one. While you speak on Oladipo, I can look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was very one for one. But what the Rockets just got for Oladipo in this current trade was Kelly Olynyk and Avery Bradley. Yeah. And a 2022 draft pick swap, which is essentially nothing. Like, and Oladipo he hasn't turned out exactly what people think, and there is a lot of drama surrounding his name, but Oladipo is a good player, and he will add a lot of scoring and just energy to that Heat team. I think the Heat should be extremely happy with how little they had to give up to get Oladipo.
Yeah, and especially for where the Heat are at as a team and what Oladipo is going to provide them, especially in like a playoff series. Something that the Heat kind of really lack right now, in my opinion, is that sort of second guy at the guard spot. But beside Jimmy Butler's not a guard, he kind of plays all over the all over their positions. But you know what I mean. They have Bam, great big men, but they needed that kind of second scoring ball handling option next to Jimmy Butler. They had tried to use guys like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn in that kind of role for like prior to the Oladipo trade, but it just didn't really work for them. Like those guys, they don't really have the scoring prowess that you want in that piece of your team. So if you're in a playoff series and you just need a bucket, Jimmy Butler's getting locked up. You can put the ball in Victor Oladipo's hands, and you can be pretty confident that he's going to be able to make something happen. So that was a great trade for the Heat.
Amazing trade.
I don't like it at all for the Rockets. The Rockets, honestly, like
for Rockets fans, man.
for the amount of assets that they had in this deadline, they really just did not handle it well at all. Like they didn't. It just feels to me like they didn't manage to. They didn't manage to like to sell properly. Like they even have guys like Eric Gordon and like Daniel House Jr. that those to a contending team. To a contending team, guys like that would have value. They could have also been sold. And I understand that the market for Oladipo was apparently just very low because it's widely understood that he was just going to be a 1-year rental anyways. However, I think that just as a front office, you need to just hold your ground.
Better.
You need to hold your ground a little bit more and tell teams that would actually benefit towards winning a championship if they trade for Victor Oladipo, like, you know what? You're gonna trade by our rules, or we're just gonna hold on to Victor Oladipo, because in my opinion, getting Avery Bradley and Kelly Olynyk is just the exact same thing as him walking in free agency.
Yeah, I totally know what you mean. It does suck for the Rockets, but to be honest, I feel bad for Rockets fans, but I don't feel bad for the organization because they chose Oladipo over Caris LeVert, and Caris LeVert right now in the league does have a lot more value.
They just wrongly thought that Oladipo would have value at the deadline.
Yeah, exactly. But Oladipo had already said, didn't he say like a year and a half ago or 2 years ago or something like that he wanted out of the Pacers and he wanted to go play with the Heat?
Yeah, like he was going to the Heat by next season, no matter what.
So it's and I had it up here. So to answer your question about what the Rockets and the Pacers decided between the LeVert thing, it was essentially a 1-for-1. The Pacers acquired LeVert and a future second-round pick from the Rockets for in exchange for Oladipo. That was it. A future second-round pick. That's nothing. That's marbles, whatever. But yeah, so definitely feel bad for Rockets fans. I mean, I think me and you both love Christian Wood, but yeah, great for the Heat. If you're a Heat fan, you should be.
Yeah, you're excited.
You're definitely excited.
Yeah, you got the Heat. If you're a Heat fan, you got your consolation prize of your front office sending out shitty offers. You didn't get Lowry for just like peanuts, but you got Oladipo.
No,
so
you got Oladipo.
Congratulations.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, there's a couple more trades that I feel like we should bust through before we talk about obviously the Norm trade. I'll just name out a couple, and then you just give me like your little initial reaction, and then I'll chime in if I have anything to say. How does that sound?
Alrighty.
Okay, so the Clippers and the Hawks made a trade that's, I think, pretty interesting. The Clippers got Rajon Rondo, and the Hawks got Lou Williams, a 2023 second-round pick, and a 2027 second-round pick. So whatever. But Lou Williams and Rajon Rondo, what do you think?
So my initial reaction to this trade was sort of just like, I perceived it as just kind of like a lateral move for both teams. But I've since come sort of thought about it a little bit more, and I've come around that it was time for the Clippers to move on from Lou Will. He's a great veteran player, but to trade him for another vet at a position where you need help, Rondo can kind of just be that like that ball handling, just playmaking point guard that they lacked. And Rondo has championship experience. He's just a known performer in the playoffs. How many rings is he? He has 2. He has one with that
with the Celtics and one with the Lakers.
And one with the Lakers. More.
He might have 3, but I know he is at least 2.
Yeah, but yeah, it's not a massive trade, but it was a nice little little upgrade if you're the Clippers to just get an experienced veteran guy that's going to be able to perform in the playoffs. So I like it.
For sure. I think it's good for the Clippers. I think they have enough scoring. And it's good to get a facilitator. I think they needed that. And the Hawks, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know why the Hawks, like, I don't know. The Hawks, in my opinion, they seem like a little bit of a mess. I don't really know exactly.
Well, they got the 2 second-round picks, right?
Yes, and
yeah, so that's why you
get
do
that.
it.
Yeah, that is why you do it. And no knock on Lou Williams. Obviously, Lou Williams is an amazing player. Just the Hawks, they just have a lot of scorers and people that need the ball in their hand to score. So, whereas Rondo is more of a passive. Anyways, one trade that also I feel like we can touch on because we were talking about the Bulls. The Bulls got Daniel Tice, which I think is awesome. The trade was Daniel Tice, Devontae Green, Troy Brown Jr. to the Bulls. The Celtics got Luke Cornett and Mo Wagner, and the Wizards got Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchinson. And, not really a lot to be said in this trade, I think, other than I really like the Bulls with Daniel Tice. And I think the Bulls are just looking towards the future. And Daniel Tice is probably one of the best backup centers in the league now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Daniel Tice is a great player. And good pull for the Bulls.
Yeah,
if you have anything to say.
Not really much more to say too. It's a nice little depth add for the Bulls to just have a guy that can just be a reliable, like good fit behind Vooch. He's a decent passer. He can space the floor. He's a good rim protector. And this is sort of an underrated thing about Tice that like I can't even really like prove with any stat or anything. But he seems like he's a very good coachable player. Like he seems like he's a good locker room guy. Like anything that I had seen from him on the Celtics, like he seems like he hustles and he doesn't really make mistakes. So yeah, I really like Daniel Tice. Having guys like that on your bench is important. If you're like the Bulls, and clearly they're trying to make a playoff run, so having a guy like Tice will really help them do that.
Yeah, I think he's a good culture guy, and I think he's a good, as you said, we know nothing about him. Maybe he's an asshole in the locker room, but he doesn't seem like it. And I know that like Brad Stevens likes him or liked him and whatever.
Brad Stevens really liked him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another kind of low-key trade that I think should be touched on is the Bucks Rockets trade. The Bucks got PJ Tucker and Karakas, I think is how it's pronounced. Karakas. For a 2021 second-round pick and a 2022 first-round pick. And the Rockets got DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson, and a 2021 first-round pick and a 2023 first-round pick. And I like PJ Tucker a lot. Like he was on the Raptors for a year. He's a great player, great knockdown shooter, rebounder, awesome defender. Also another guy that it just seems like you just want him on your team. You don't want to play against him. And I once again, I like the trade. I like the Bucks that they did well.
Yeah, it's a savvy move from both front offices, just for like in terms of the Rockets, like being able to turn PJ Tucker, who like you're on like a 20-game losing streak prior to beating the Raptors, but to be able to turn PJ Tucker into first round draft capital is a really smart thing for them to be able to do. And Milwaukee's lineup is just a defensive juggernaut after that.
For real, bro.
Just the length and just like man-to-man defense that lineup has now is incredible. Like they're just Milwaukee just has a team of dogs. It's going to be interesting to see how they do in the playoffs if they manage to get over their playoff curse.
For real. And I think there's two more notable things before we talk about Norm Powell. I guess kind of three, but two. So LaMarcus Aldridge being dealt to the Nets. Maybe we could, I know we haven't touched on Blake Griffin being dealt to the Nets at all, but personally, I think that's whatever. And then Andre Drummond being dealt to the Lakers. You want to take, either Lakers or Nets away?
I'll take the Nets thing away because, like, to be honest, I think that the whole Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge thing is like they're fine players, but it's really just overblown, in my opinion, in terms of like what they're actually doing.
Like they're like and shit.
These are two guys that it's like what Aldridge is a little bit better than Blake Griffin, in my opinion.
No, he
but
is.
but they're sort of the same type of player where they're just like they're kind of just older big men and like in the twilights of their career, and they're not what they once were. And it undoubtedly is a good move for the Nets to just sign experienced guys like that to just small contracts, because you're a playoff team. You just want as much experience as possible on your roster. But what I don't like think is justified about it is all the Instagram
Same.
hyping about it as if LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin are both like these like all-star like fourth and fifth pieces on the Nets. It's no, like give it a rest. Give it a rest.
I know what you mean. I totally know what you mean. Like for me, especially Blake Griffin is like before his dunk in his first game with the Nets and his debut with the Nets, he hadn't dunked since 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2018. I think I heard that stat somewhere. It blew me away because that is what he's known for, right? And he's just kind of been washed for a while, and he was an exciting player. But I don't know exactly how much he brings to that team. Like he's not that great of a defender. It's not like the Nets, like he's kind of had Blake Griffin's had to change his games over the last recent years because of his injuries and just because of how the league's changed and his age and all those things. But that outside shooting and kind of like that, I don't know, like Blake Griffin doesn't really add that much to the team. But I do like the LaMarcus Aldridge signing. He has he's a good 3-point shooter for his size. He's a decent defender. Obviously, he'll be a good locker room guy, and he can knock down the mid range and pass. And I like that signing for sure.
Yeah, and just going the other big buyout market guy that we wanted to talk about was Drummond, and the Drummond signing is interesting because it's something that I think with just how banged up the Lakers are right now, it's something that they really just need to do, not because Drummond is like extremely like great as like an actual player outside of his just rim protection and rebounding. But they needed just to be able to plug in a serviceable center with how banged up their team is right now, with just AD being out, LeBron being out, and Montrezl Harrell he's not the guy to like to fill that role as a starting five on a team. He's in my opinion better as like sort of a 6-man type of guy that comes in as sort of like an energy like forward center type of hybrid. So honestly, at the time of recording this, we don't know the exact details of the Drummond contract. He just signed it, I believe, like 2 hours ago, so it hasn't come out. But if you can get a guy like that on a team friendly deal, again, it's just another case of bolster your depth if you're going to make a run.
For sure, and I think the teams that seem like they're going to make a run this year all have these big, like, big and strong centers, such as Gobert, Jokic, Embiid, like very physical, strong, and obviously everyone in the NBA is tall, but taller teams than normal. Like if you look at the 76ers, one of the best teams in the East, like their team is extremely physical and tall, and same with Milwaukee. And same with the Lakers now. Like I think the Lakers needed to add that guy to compete against other teams with these big centers that Harrell isn't really that guy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like you even see it happen in like basically every Raps game we watch. It's like having a small ball like floor spacing type of center on the floor in your starting lineup like game to game. It's not a sustainable strategy to have, because like it's not even about Drummond being like an all-star center or not. It's about just body. It's about just having that big body in the paint just as a presence that the other team doesn't just automatically think that they're going to be able to just go into the paint and push you around. And having Drummond is very beneficial, especially with AD out.
Exactly. And that's why the Nets are trying to sign big players too, like LaMarcus Aldridge. Like we all know that LaMarcus Aldridge isn't the player he once was, but he is a big body. And that's mainly why I think they're signing him. And that's mainly, I think, why the Lakers are signing Drummond, is because these are good players. And I think they're just kind of there to do the traditional center thing. And I think that's okay. And you need that against teams like the Sixers. And Bucks and Jazz and Nuggets and yeah, I think they're just filling in a piece that need to be filled in.
Yeah, absolutely. Good moves for them.
For sure. Last thing that we want to talk about is the Raptors.
Norman Powell.
Yeah, take it away, man. What do you think?
So I just want to say for that entire day of the trade deadline, I was a mess. I was sitting in the backyard with Lucas for most of the day, just like I was like refreshing like Twitter and Reddit like every like 5 minutes, just looking for trade updates of Lowry and Norm, and I was very just nervous about what was happening. I'm very sad to see Norman Powell go. Second longest tenured Raptor on the team. He's just been just a core guy on our team for so long. He's done so many great things for the Toronto Raptors, and I just wish him all the best in Portland a million times.
For sure.
That being said, as sad as I am to see him go, I think it was probably a necessary move for us to make. Norm going into this offseason, as I'm sure everybody knows by this point, he was going to be a free agent, and with how well he's played this year, he sort of played he himself off of the Raptors almost. We're in terms of like you were saying this in our last video that he's played so well this year, being like a 20 plus point per game scorer kind of player, that his value is almost too high for where the Raps are as a team to not try to move. And when you combine that temptation to get value on the trade market for a guy like that, with the fact that it was going to be frankly just very difficult and not a good idea for us to lock up the amount of salary into Norm on top of the amount of cap that we have in Fred, OG, and Siakam, to include Norm in that sort of like big four of the team it would have been locking up too much cap for what their ceiling would have been.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a great move to just go out. You get a guy with a very similar skill set to Norm. He seems like Gary Trent seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. He seems like a very, from what I've heard in just like the interviews that I've seen posted online and like Raptors kind of things, he seems like he's just a very hard worker. In terms of him as a player, he's, like I said before, good scorer. He's got a good nose for the net. He can kind of play like a sort of guard forward hybrid position with his body type. He's 6'6", probably around like 220 pounds. So he's a decently big guy, and he's a good defender. He's just a nice all around player for being 22 years old. And I think that if we were going to move on from a guy who's been a core member of our team for so long, that's the sort of return that we would need to get. So overall, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's really nice, like now looking back at the trade deadline and still having Lowry on our team is just such a blessing, because he just is, if you could pick a player, well, he is the greatest Raptor of all time, and he defines the Raptors culture. And I'm just so grateful that we still have him on our team.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense that we decided to get rid of Norm at the time we did, because not only was he going to be a free agent, not only was his value higher than it's ever been, but I guess, Masai, he said, we listened to trades offers for Lowry, but, he's just too valuable, and teams just weren't offering what we think he's valued at. And it makes sense to get rid of Norm, because now hopefully we could re-sign Lowry on a deal that's good for him and good for us, and not have to also worry about re-signing Norm as well. And I think it makes sense, because then you get something back for Norm, and you're also able to hopefully retain Lowry and make him a Raptor for life.
If I'm being honest with you, I think in this offseason that Lowry is just going to walk and sign somewhere else. But
really,
yes, because like,
wow,
the thing with Kyle is like it gets thrown around a lot that he's the Raptor. He's a Raptor. He's like the GOAT of our franchise, all of which is very true. Mm-hmm. But in the past, Kyle has also been a player that's he's financial oriented. In contract negotiations between Kyle and the Raptors in the past, it's been sort of a scenario where he's not been a guy that's known to take like a team friendly deal.
Yes,
he's more than happy to stay in Toronto and to retire a Raptor and just be a great member of our organization overall. But he wants to do that at the amount that he's worth. And I think that's something that he understands how much he's worth around the league very well. And if we're to the point as a franchise where we can't pay him what that value is, I think he'll go to a team that will be able to. And I just don't think it would be a good idea for us to be that team that pays Lowry like $25 million a season just to sentimentally keep him as a Raptor, as sad as that is. Because
I agree. I agree. But Lowry is also 35 years old. I don't think that a team will want to lock him up for, like, for example, if you're Lowry and you're offered maybe, around 20 mil a year or a little lower for, let's say, a 4-year contract with the Raptors. So that would be until you're 39, right? Or you're offered maybe a 2-year, 25 million contract with someone else. I think you take the 4-year deal because you're locked up and it's more secure and more financially stable. And obviously these are just hypotheticals we're throwing around here, but I don't know how much a team would be willing to pay for a guy like on a more long-term contract. Because I could see the Raptors maybe, doing a longer contract with just less money each year to make him the Raptor for life. And I see what you mean, though. I guess it's just different ideas.
The thing that I'm saying is that I don't think that we should be paying Lowry on a 4-year contract with how old he is. Just from just in terms of just making smart organizational decisions, as hard as it is to just take emotion and just sediment out of it, of just being a fan of the team. Over the next 4 years, we have, I believe it is $112 million invested into our 3 guys of Siakam, OG, and Fred. Though, in my opinion, that is kind of the big future, the big core of our team going forward.
Yeah.
So with that amount of money already being wrapped up, you need to consider how you're maintaining flexibility in order to make moves that will allow you to win.
Like getting
a center, or just arising to any opportunity. For example, like what the Chicago Bulls are doing.
Yes.
But they are able to do that because they don't have guys that aren't in their main core locked up on pretty hefty long deals. What would happen if we locked up Lowry to, say, even a deal that's worth $20 million for 4 years? We're then almost at the cap with with literally just the current core of our team. And you have to, as hard as it is to remove yourself of just loving Lowry as a Raptors fan, it's also important to just be realistic about what we have in front of us and what the ceiling of that core is. And if you ask me, in the next 4 years, does a core of Lowry, Siakam, OG, and Fred have a chance to win a championship? I do not think it does. And the issue with that is that if we blocked Lowry up to that deal, we wouldn't have the flexibility to go and get a piece that would make us a championship contender if the situation arises.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. I guess I'm just thinking that our head office is, I hope that we're smart enough, and I guess we were, vocal with Lowry, because he is entering free agency. So it'd be a shame if he just walked in after, we could have gotten obviously a pretty decent amount for him during the trade. I do see us trying to lock him up for, I don't know how long.
I think we're gonna offer him a short contract is what I think is gonna happen. We're gonna offer him a 1 or 2 year deal, and I'd be fine with that too. But I don't want to have a 39-year-old locked up to like a
$20 million deal or something. Yeah, no,
exactly.
No, of course, yeah, I do see what you're saying. But yeah, back to Norm. Just my opinion, real quick. As I do agree with, I agree with you. I think that we kind of needed to move him at the time we did, and yeah, I think the return is not bad. Initially, I was a little like, oh, like this is what I thought.
That's not a first round pick.
Yeah. I was wanting to see that first round pick there.
Yeah.
But I think
Gary Trent's a great young player, though. I'm happy with the return.
For sure. Yeah. And yeah, I think with that, any last points?
No, I do not have any last points. And with that, I think we're going to wrap her up. So anybody who's still watching, thanks for tuning in this week. And let us know in the comments what moves you think your team should have made. Did they make any moves? Were they buyers, sellers? Let us know your thoughts. Thanks. Bye.
Adios.